team.
Gotta open your heart. Can't hold on much long, but I will never let go. I know it's one-way track. Tell me how long this will last. I'm not gonna think this way, nor will I count on others. Close my eyes and feel the burn. Now I see what I've gotta do. Open your heart, it's gonna be alright. Yeah. Open your heart. Yeah. Oh boy, it's Sonic Adventure. This game has been receiving a lot of negative attention lately, which is really weird because when this game got released in late 1999, it got some pretty positive reviews, but nowadays it seems like almost every popular YouTuber is jumping on the SA1 and 2 or bad games bandwagon. And it's not like they're wrong or anything, and it's just their opinion. However, a lot of them hyperbolize their opinions to the point where it seems absolutely not okay for anyone to like or defend these games. I'm positive that that isn't really their intention, but a lot of these big-name YouTubers overemphasize their points to where it becomes very difficult to determine what they're actually trying to say or whether or not they're being serious or not. It's a very confusing mix-up that sadly has created a pretty unfair environment online where it's not okay to like any 3D Sonic game, or that all of them haven't aged that well to the point where they're completely unplayable, which I don't get because there are still people who think games like Mario 64 and Ocarina of Time are still some of the greatest video games of all time, when I think that certain aspects of those games have also not aged very well, yet they don't treat it as a big deal like they do for Sonic. So the basic point is that if you like Sonic Adventure 1, 2, or any 3D Sonic game, you're an idiot. You have nothing interesting to say. If you try to defend this game, you're a flake, a misguided individual. You don't know any better. You should stop thinking for yourself and just join the rest of the crowd who hate this game. I hate that. I genuinely hate that way of thinking, and I hate how it's taken over most of the internet. You shouldn't be forced into hating a game that you really like. There are some exceptions to this rule, but I'll talk about them in a future episode. So I guess before I talk about my completely delusional and absolutely wrong opinion about Sonic Adventure, I think I should do a bit of backstory about this game. In the mid-90s, Sega was really pushing for a 3D Sonic game to get released since their rival, Nintendo, already put their mascot Mario into 3D in the 1996 video game Super Mario 64, a game that pretty much perfected and revolutionized the 3D platformer in the same way the original Super Mario Bros. Revolutionized the 2D platforming genre. They put their American team, Sega Technical Institute, in charge of making a 3D Sonic game for their new system, the Sega Saturn. The game was, of course, Sonic X-treme, which was due to be released in Christmas of 1996, but as we all know, the game went through development hell, causing the game to miss several deadlines until it was quietly cancelled in early 1997. Apparently, Sonic X-treme's development got so stressful for the people working on it that one of the main developers was told that he only had a few months left to live, and another one of the main developers suffered from a severe case of pneumonia. What the hell happened to this game? With Sonic X-treme being no more and most of Sega's American team being fatally ill, the Japan-based Sonic team took over to make a brand new Sonic game. Originally, it was going to be an RPG Sonic game that went under the title, well, Sonic RPG. The man in charge of the game was Takashi Iizuka, who was one of the lead programmers on Sonic 3 and Knuckles. Iizuka originally wanted there to be much more focus on story and to have more playable characters in this new game. The game went through several changes and switched from being developed on the Sega Saturn to Sega's new upcoming system, the Dreamcast. Eventually, the idea of the game being an RPG was dropped in favor of it being the first true 3D Sonic platforming game. But Iizuka was still pushing for there to be more story in the game and for there to still be several playable characters with their own storylines and gameplay styles. Sega also wanted this game to show off all the things their new system was capable of pulling off. This led to the creation of characters like E102 Gamma and Big the Cat. Oh god. The game went through a lot of hiccups and differing ideas during development, but in December of 1998, a month after the Dreamcast release, the game came out and it went under the aptly known title Sonic Adventure. The game didn't come to America until the following year on September 9th, 1999, or as it was most famously referred to, 9999. Apparently, the original version of Sonic Adventure was a buggy, glitchy mess when it was first released in Japan, so around the time Adventure 1 was released worldwide, an updated version of the game was released in Japan only, and it was called Sonic Adventure International. All this version was pretty much the version that everyone else got that differed from the original 1998 Japanese release. This version ironed out several of the game's bugs, and I also think it included English voice acting, but I could be wrong about that. In 2003, Sega saw how successful their GameCube port of Sonic Adventure 2 was doing, so they decided to release a remastered version of Sonic Adventure, which was called Sonic Adventure DX, Director's Cut. Initially, the Dreamcast version of Sonic Adventure received some pretty positive reviews from several critics. IGN even gave it an 8.6. An 8.6? Wow, times really have changed. However, the DX port got completely mixed reviews, and apparently it was more buggy and had tons of glitches that made the game unplayable. IGN even lowered their score to a 5.0. The DX port would later be ported to the PlayStation Network and Xbox Live Arcade in 2010, but this port got even worse reviews. People were calling this game a broken mess, an unbearable piece of garbage, and that this game was apparently the primary reason as to why Sonic can't work in 3D. IGN even lowered their score again to a 3.5. Are you fucking kidding me? What the hell happened? People love this game back on the Dreamcast, so why the hell are these ports receiving such negative attention? Actually, the PSN port was the first time I ever got to play this game. It was January 2012. Sonic CD made me a dedicated fan of the series, and I was trying to get my hand on any Sonic game I could possibly get at the time. I bought a PSN card with my Christmas money and browsed the PlayStation Network store to buy more Sonic games. I ended up coming across Sonic Adventure and decided to buy it. I first became aware of Sonic Adventure's existence through an old YouTube video that went through the history of Sonic. I remember it was a relatively short video, and all it showed of Sonic Adventure was that opening cinematic showing the city be flooded. When I booted up the game, I watched the opening cutscene and said, "Hey, I recognize that! This game is gonna be awesome!" Then I started Sonic's story, skipped all the cutscenes, and ended up playing the first level, Emerald Coast. I was like, aw yeah, this game is awesome! And it was. I was having a lot of fun playing this game. Then I beat Emerald Coast, skipped the cutscene that followed, and frustration occurred. I had no idea where I was going. I just wanted to play more Sonic levels, but the game put me in this dumb hub world, and since I skipped all the cutscenes, I didn't know that I was supposed to go to another hub area and progress through the game. Then I just gave up on the game and regretted buying it, and I called it a very bad game. Those were my actual first impressions, and it wasn't because of the unbearable glitches or anything like that, it was just because of the hub worlds. I instantly jumped on the SA2 is better than SA1 train because, well, at the time, I knew that SA2 didn't have hub worlds, and it was just stage to stage, and I never bothered playing Sonic Adventure for months. But since Sonic Adventure 2's HD port wouldn't come out for several months, I went back to Adventure 1 because I figured that's all I really have to play until Adventure 2's re-release. Eventually, my negative feelings towards this game just sort of faded away. The hub areas didn't seem like an issue anymore, and I ended up beating the entire game. Next thing I knew, I was playing this game non-stop to the point where I 100%ed the game and adored Adventure 1 to the point where when I finally got to play Adventure 2, I had a couple gripes with it. But I guess before I start talking about my issues with Adventure 2, I should probably talk about Adventure 1 first. Now, I could have reviewed the HD version of Adventure 1 since, well, that was the first version I got to play. But I loved this game a lot. Probably more than a lot of other people, except for Nick. He loves this game a lot too. So, I decided to go the distance for this review, and I actually got a Sega Dreamcast and an original copy of Sonic Adventure. This was quite a hassle for me to get, but I'll explain why near the end of the review. Now then, let's just see how terribly this game is held up. You start the game as Sonic, and throughout the course of Sonic's story you'll unlock other playable characters who have their own storylines. These characters include Tails, Knuckles, Amy Rose, Big the Cat, goddammit, and E102 Gamma. All of them don't play exactly the same as Sonic, and while I would be kind of disappointed that Sonic Team couldn't make all the gameplay styles similar to Sonic, but Sega was pushing for this game to show off the Dreamcast hardware, even though it proved kind of pointless after the PS2 came out a year later and basically murdered the Dreamcast. However, I don't think this decision really affects how I think about this game. I mean, I do have some problems with this game that are pretty apparent, but that doesn't affect my overall enjoyment of Adventure 1. But before I can talk about how these characters play, I should probably talk about this game's story. One interesting thing is that each character offers their own perspective, wink wink, of how the story takes place in their campaign. This also means that certain parts of the plot aren't really told in order, and you'll have to play as different characters to get the full story. To summarize the plot the best way I can, in chronological order, Dr. Eggman returns to take over the planet. Again. His plan this time involves shattering the Master Emerald while Knuckles isn't looking. This releases an ancient being known as Chaos, the god of destruction. Why? Well, a long time ago, a tribe of echidnas tried to abuse the power of the Master Emerald. This ended up causing Chaos to annihilate all of them out of frustration and anger. But before Chaos could cause more damage, a girl echidna named Tikal sealed herself and Chaos inside the Master Emerald using a chant that her grandmother taught her.
What were you saying before? It's something my grandmother taught me.
Does that sound ridiculous to you? Well then, welcome to Sonic the fucking Hedgehog, where have you been? Thus, thousands of years later, Eggman shatters the Master Emerald and releases Chaos, and plans on using his power to destroy the city of Station Square so that he can build Robotnik Land.
Together, we'll destroy Station Square! And on its ruins, I'll build Robotnik Land!
Fun fact, this is the last Sonic game to be released in America where Eggman is calling himself Robotnik. And it's also the first Sonic game where Sonic refers to him as Eggman. During the course of Sonic and Tails' adventure, Eggman gives Chaos a few Chaos Emeralds, which end up changing its shape and gives him even more power. Meanwhile, Knuckles is hunting down the shattered pieces of the Master Emerald, Amy is protecting a bird that's holding a Chaos Emerald, Big is fishing, for fuck's sake, and Gamma is on a mission to free several birds trapped inside several Batniks before he eventually dies himself. I'm not joking. Sonic manages to stop most forms of Chaos and defeats Eggman. Tails stops Eggman from destroying Station Square using a missile, Knuckles restores the Master Emerald, Amy saves the birdies, Big, catches a frog, motherfucker, and Gamma succeeds at his mission and finally explodes, becoming a free bird. This would be the end of the game, but there is one final Super Sonic story. This shows a still active Chaos betraying Eggman and collecting all 7 Chaos Emeralds on his own. After absorbing the power from the Emeralds, Chaos floods the entirety of Station Square and becomes his final ultimate form, Perfect Chaos. Sonic and the others try to figure out a way to stop Perfect Chaos, while Eggman tries to do so on his own until he gets pwned by Chaos pretty easily. Everyone collects all the colorless Chaos Emeralds, and Tails explains that while Chaos did absorb a large amount of power from the Chaos Emeralds, apparently Chaos only absorbed the negative power from the Chaos Emeralds, and that Sonic, or Knuckles, he still has a super form but no one seems to care, can still go super by using the real power from the Chaos Emeralds. Yeah, that did just sound really fucking stupid and kind of half-assed. Can't Sonic or Knuckles use the Super Emeralds to go hyper, or Tails use it to go super? Oh wait, the Super Emeralds aren't even in this game. Or any other game for that matter. Fuck me. So Sonic absorbs the true energy from the Chaos Emeralds to go super and destroy Perfect Chaos. After successfully doing so, Tikal shows up and says that peace has finally been made between her and Chaos and takes him away, leaving the city of Station Square completely destroyed. Happy ending.
All's well that ends well, right?
The city's been fucking destroyed!
Okay, that was Sonic Adventure's plot, and while the last story seems a bit messy, I actually don't think this plot is all that bad. The story isn't exactly told in the same way that I described it. Usually a lot of these plot points occur during different parts of each character's story, and sometimes the characters cross paths leading to a lot of repeated scenarios. Though one detail that I like is that the dialogue is changed up a bit to try and avoid repetition. But if you're playing through the whole game, I don't blame you if you get a sense of I've seen this before. The game can inspire more revisits because there are a lot of hidden story elements in the cutscenes and even in the levels. Now, in concept, I really like the idea of playing a video game and getting subtle hints about things to come later in the game, especially if the cutscenes are well done, but that really isn't the case for Adventure 1. While Sonic 3 and Knuckles and maybe even Sonic 2 and CD got in-game cutscenes done right, Adventure 1 is, well, I'm all in favor of a Sonic game being told without dialogue, but Sonic Team took the bullet and decided to let these characters finally talk in the video games, and...
Oh yeah! This is happening!
That's the first line you hear in the game. Sweet Jesus. Well, I'm not against the idea of having Sonic talk in his video games. I'm especially not against Adventure 1's cast, because I think that Sonic's voice in Adventure 1 is the best he has ever sounded in any of his video games to this very day. In Adventure 1, 2, and Heroes, Sonic was voiced by Ryan Drummond, who makes Sonic sound like the typical radical and cool teen, which I honestly think fits the character since Sonic is supposed to be 15 years old. I just love the way Drummond portrayed Sonic. It's full of heart and gives him some genuine emotion and likability. Corey Bringus as Tails isn't that bad, mainly because it fits for Tails to sound like a little boy. Michael McGoran is a pretty decent sounding Knuckles, if a bit emotionless most of the time. Jennifer Dewey is a pretty good voice for Amy. She does make Amy sound a bit obnoxious, but she also doesn't forget to make her sound likable too. The last of the main voice actors is the late Dean Bristow as Dr. Eggman, and he is just fantastic. He's ominous but also enjoyably cheesy. There's just so much character in this portrayal of Eggman that I honestly don't think any other interpretation of the character got right. Where Ryan Drummond is a great Sonic, Dean Bristow is the perfect Eggman. The two work very well together. To be honest, all the voices in this game are just about great. The acting, on the other hand...
You're right, my friend, so here we go!
That's Eggman! I wonder what happened to Sonic.
Chaos!
Come on, Sonic! We need to get busy!
Is this a dream? It's more like a nightmare.
Well, never mind. This time I'll get him good!
Oh my god, it pains me to hear this great voice cast receive such terrible direction. One thing you may notice is that the lip syncing is pretty terrible, but that's mainly because the lip movements were mostly adjusted to sync with the Japanese voices. Sonic Team didn't have the time or budget to redo the cutscenes to fit the English voices, so as a result most of the American actors were forced to draw out their lines to an almost hilarious degree. Which really sucks because, like I've said, I think all these actors hit the right beats for these characters. This would later affect Adventure 2, though not as much, and I personally think they got it right with Sonic Heroes, except for Tails' voice, but I'll get to that shit later. But if you thought the English voice acting was pretty bad, get a load of these in-game cutscenes. When it comes to character movements, they're incredibly stock and awkward. The Dreamcast was a pretty easy system for the game designers to develop on, but it seems like Sonic Team was still getting used to the system's hardware, and since the development was getting pretty rushed since Sega wanted this to be a launch title, they, for better or worse, had to work with what they had at the time, and it really hasn't aged all that well. The lip movements are weird as hell, they're even worse in the DX port, and in the Dreamcast version, you can't skip the cutscenes. Every time a character, specifically Sonic, moves their lips, the top of their heads start to freak out. It's really weird. Anyways, both the cutscenes and voice acting are pretty bad. They're one of the primary reasons as to why most people think this game held up so horribly. I don't think there's anyone out there who would bother to defend these cutscenes and the poorly translated dialogue. Seriously, was the localization process also rushed?
Where's this?
Uh-oh! What's this?
Let's investigate, wanna?
Again, I love these voice actors and I love the voices that they're providing, but their voice direction in these in-game cutscenes seriously should have been better. But I will admit, these cutscenes are still pretty entertaining to watch. They're great to make fun of, and some lines are just downright hysterical to listen to.
Eggman, no!
Eggman, yes!
This is going to be an extremely awkward Rule 34. Aw, crap, Sonic's here.
So yeah, I like SA1's story even though the cutscenes and voice acting don't really do a good job of telling it. But I think, as Nick brilliantly said in his re-review of these games, these cutscenes don't ruin the most important aspect about this game, which is the main reason you come to play the game: the gameplay. We have 6 playable characters, and you start off with Sonic. Almost all of Sonic's movesets from the Genesis games are here. He can run fast, and he's got a spin dash. Using the Dreamcast controller as an example, you spin dash by using either X or B. One thing I'm not that much into is how Sonic can just mindlessly abuse the spin dash by just spamming the action button several times, which is great for speedrunning, but that's not really how it was in the Genesis games. In the Genesis games, if you press down while running, you'd roll into a ball. But in Adventure 1, Sonic can instantly start spin dashing while he's running. No charge up needed like in previous games. I also miss how Sonic can't simply roll into a ball. I don't know how to explain it, but I just love the feeling of running for a bit and then pressing down to watch Sonic roll for a bit. That's almost non-existent in Adventure 1. You can keep Sonic rolling into a ball after spin dashing, but being able to come out of ball mode by pressing either X or B is kind of blah. Still, playing as Sonic in Adventure 1 feels great. Being able to run in any direction you want is just fun. It's the best Sonic has ever controlled in a 3D game. The controls are just perfect. Sonic also has a new ability in this game, the homing attack. You can use it by pressing the A button twice, which can cause Sonic to home into any nearby enemy. If you press the A button twice when there aren't any enemies around, it can make Sonic do an air dash in whatever direction he's going so that he can get a decent amount of speed. Moving on, there's Tails, who almost controls just about the same as Sonic. He runs at a good speed, he can fly if you press the A button after you jump in the air. You fly higher by holding A, and to descend you press either X or B. And instead of a homing attack, he has a spin attack that you can use by either pressing X or B. It's a decent attack that I find great for killing enemies, but Tails can't spin dash anymore like he could in the previous games. I don't get why he can't though. I would understand this if it was still on the Genesis, but the Dreamcast controller had 4 fucking buttons on it. It would have been pretty simple if X was the tail attack and B was the spin dash. It would have been an easy fix. Knuckles is pretty good. He runs quickly, he can glide like he did in Sonic 3K, and he can punch enemies by pressing either X or B. God damn it, why did it have to be both X and B? You know what this means, right? This also means that Knuckles can't spin dash either. Did Sonic Team just forget that both him and Tails also had the ability to spin dash in previous games? I mean, both Tails and Knuckles can roll into a ball after you run for a bit and tap either X or B. It's alright, and I wish Sonic could do this too, but I really think these button layouts should have taken more thought put into it. But trust me, it gets much worse in Adventure 2. Now for the new playable characters. There's Amy Rose returning from Sonic CD. She moves pretty dang slow, which is kind of disappointing. She can't spin dash or roll into a ball either, but she does have a pretty strong hammer that she could use to smash Batniks, and she could do an awesome somersault that I always love using. Then there's Big. No, I'll talk about Big later. The last playable character is E102 Gamma. He plays nothing like the previous characters. He is quick on his feet, but his gameplay style is more about shooting stuff. You can shoot by pressing either X or B, and you can lock onto enemies by holding the action button and pointing the laser at a few enemies. Then release X or B and he'll unleash a wave of missiles to kill all of them. But don't hold the button for too long because otherwise his laser's gonna start glowing blue and then it's just gonna stop targeting on enemies. Also, someone on Twitter asked me if I could mention this, but apparently Gamma's gameplay style was borrowed from the 1998 Sega Saturn game Burning Rangers. I've never played it, but I thought this would be pretty interesting to put in the review, and this was kind of the first time someone ever asked me to do this, so thank you Bilia the Sega Gamer for your interesting fact. Throughout each character's adventure, you'll also find all sorts of power-ups. Sonic can get the ability to Light Dash, which requires him to charge up a spin dash until he glows blue, and he can zoom across a trail of rings by letting go of X or B. Tails can get an ability to make him fly longer, and he can also get a ribbon on his chest that makes him use his tail attack for much longer too.
You found the rhythm badge. To do continuous tail attacks, hold the action button down.
Break it down! Stop! Hammer time!
Knuckles can get even more stronger gloves that could give him the ability to dig into the ground and into walls. Amy can get a few upgrades to make her hammer better, but she doesn't get any speed upgrade, which is kind of disappointing. Big gets fishing lure power-ups and a floaty. And Gamma could get even more stronger missile upgrades and a hover ability. I don't mind these upgrades, and it's a pretty neat detail to have them alter the character's appearance during the game and during the cutscenes, but I do agree with most people who think the upgrades make the characters look weird, especially Tails' chest ribbon and Knuckles' yellow gloves. Again, this gets much worse in Adventure 2. Since the characters play differently, their levels are also designed to fit them. There are 11 stages as a whole in this game. Sonic goes through 10, Tails, Knuckles, and Gamma go through 5, Amy has 3, and Big has 4. Why does Big have one more level than Amy? Sonic is the standard 3D fast-paced platformer. Tails is about racing Sonic to the end of the level. Knuckles is about treasure hunting. Amy is going through the level while being chased by one of Eggman's machines. Big goes fishing. What the fuck? And Gamma is about killing enemies, with his last few levels involving him fighting against a specific E-Series Batnik. Everyone, except Big, has a good sense of platforming and exploring, while speed may vary depending on what character you're playing as. Sonic is obviously the favorite in this game, mainly because his levels are what people look for in a Sonic game. A good amount of speed, lots of platforming, and great set pieces for a decent amount of exploration. Your curiosity for exploring is rewarded with rings, item boxes, and extra lives. Though one thing I'll say I'm not that much into is how Tails and Knuckles, even Amy, can't play all the levels that Sonic goes through. The three are limited to whatever level they're put in, and for Tails you can't explore the platform as much because you're basically on a time limit to beat whoever you're racing. Knuckles can explore a lot, but his levels are always about treasure hunting. Which, yeah, that does involve a lot of exploring. Each level has 3 pieces of the Master Emerald to look for, which are scattered in random spots, about 100 different combinations according to a few Sonic fans. All you have to do is find each of them to beat the level, and you're given a pretty helpful radar that glows red when you're closer to an emerald piece and glows blue when you're away from one. I don't like how Knuckles is limited to just emerald hunting in all of his levels, and he can't just reach the end of the levels like Sonic or Tails do. But at the same time, I don't have that much of a terrible time looking for the emerald pieces. They're easy enough to find, and they glow pretty bright when you're near them. So for story's sake, I'll let it slide this time, but by Adventure 2, there's no real excuse for Knuckles to not be able to beat a level regularly like Sonic does. Amy's levels, and her whole story really, are incredibly short and involve her running through the level being chased by a Batnik called Zero, with her levels ending with her holding onto a balloon. There is a decent amount of platforming, but I seriously wish Amy could run faster than this, come on. Then there's Big the Cat. Big isn't about platforming, exploring, or even speed. It's all about fishing. You're just fishing. In Big's really pointless story, he's going around in levels trying to catch his friend, Froggy. All you have to do is cast a lure in the water and catch Froggy. This is easily the worst part of the game. The only positive I have about Big's story is that it's incredibly short. In fact, it's the shortest campaign out of all the characters. Also, I don't get why people have such a difficult time with Big's levels. So many people say that Froggy only bites the lure at random, but that's actually not true at all. Once Froggy grabs the lure, move the analog stick left to right so that the lure can clamp onto Froggy, and he'll grab onto it and you'll get the music cue to pull him in. Just keep your eye out on the bar at the right of the screen. You can reel him in faster by pressing either A or slower by pressing X or B. It's easy as hell, and the floaty upgrade can make things go much faster. I mean, yeah, it does take a while and it's a bit tedious to get Froggy to notice the lure, but after he catches it, it really isn't that difficult to reel him in. Watch this, I'm gonna catch Froggy in like 30 seconds.
The big fighting! Doggy!
See? It's the easiest shit ever. If you can't catch Froggy, then you probably should stop playing video games in general because, well, that's kind of embarrassing. I will say that the worst part of Big's story is that you're kind of forced to play it to get to the final ending. But this complaint can also sadly affect Gamma's storyline too. Gamma is about a robot that learns he's a worthless creation and that all the other robots are being forced into battle by Eggman. Thus, Gamma turns against Eggman and goes on a mission to destroy all the E-Series robots and free the birds that are trapped inside of them, and Gamma ends up dying too. It's a pretty deep story for a Sonic game, but it serves no purpose to the main plot. I don't think Big and Gamma should have been a mandatory story to beat in order to complete the game. Gamma's levels can be fun, but Big's levels can be really boring. These two should have been extra stories that you don't need to play, but they're not, and they're both required in order for you to play as Supersonic. Oh yeah, you may have noticed that you could play as Supersonic in the last story, but can you play as Supersonic in regular levels? Is Super Knuckles playable in this game too? No and no. The special stages aren't even in this game either in order to collect the Chaos Emeralds. Instead, the characters just sort of find them during the story as if they're Dragon Balls. You may be thinking, well, there are 7 stories to complete and there are 7 Chaos Emeralds. Maybe after you beat the stories you'll get the ability to play as Supersonic? Plausible assumption, but sadly it's incorrect. Supersonic is only playable during the final boss battle. While Supersonic isn't playable in the final game, some fans actually found this very intriguing piece of dialogue from Tikal that was left in the game's coding, but it's never actually heard when you're playing the game.
Gather 50 rings and press the action button while you jump. You'll transform into Supersonic, but watch out for your ring consumption.
What? This is really interesting because while you can't turn into Supersonic in regular levels, Sonic Team clearly kept that idea in mind. This concept would later be incorporated in mods for Sonic Adventure DX on PC. But upon playing as Supersonic in those mods, he can seriously overshoot a lot of level structures. Supersonic moves a bit too fast in the regular levels, but one neat thing is that you can turn back into regular Sonic by jumping in the air and pressing the action button again. It's nice, and I think it would have been a decent enough fix to have Supersonic be playable in Adventure 1, but sadly Sonic Team scrapped that idea. Oh well, these levels clearly weren't designed for Supersonic to fly in. Okay, very late into the review, but I'm gonna finally talk about the levels. I'm gonna mostly use the level order that belongs to Sonic because, well, he's the main character. Emerald Coast. This is hands down one of the best Sonic levels I've ever played. I'm dead serious. It's one of my all-time favorite levels in a Sonic game. It's pretty iconic, especially for its Killer Well segment that is automated, but whatever. It's a decent spectacle. However, we are all aware of this one part where Sonic goes through a loop. A lot of people have a difficult time getting through this loop, or any loop in the game for that matter. I'll admit, I had a difficult time getting through it the first time I played this game, but over the years I've learned a technique that I figured out pretty easily. And I've gotta say, it's absolutely unacceptable. It's incredibly stupid what they want you to do to get through a loop. Like, holy shit. When you approach the loop, like, holy fuck, you won't believe this. You hold up. That's all you have to do. Just hold up, you fucking morons. Yeah, the loops in the 3D games are all automatic. I think Shay May perfectly described how this kinda goes against the original idea of the loop structure in a Sonic game. Originally, you'd have to pick up the speed needed to conquer running around a loop, but in the 3D games, it's just automated. What was once an obstacle is now a spectacle. That's kinda disappointing. I'm sure it must have been pretty difficult and very nauseating to get around how loops are supposed to work in 3D, but I'll let it slide for Adventure 1's sake. Back to Emerald Coast, I loved the water effects and the music is so fucking good. Actually, full stop. The soundtrack, the fucking soundtrack, it's so damn good! The soundtrack is given a much bigger boost this time around and it's fantastic. Each piece of music fits the environments they're put in, and their genres can really vary. Some tracks are catchy, some tracks are atmospheric, and some are even beautiful or tragic sounding. It's terrific. One thing I love about the soundtrack is how each level has more than one piece of music stuck to it. One thing you may notice is that how you're in the hub areas and enter a new part of it, the music sort of stops and restarts when the area is loaded up. This was mainly because the Dreamcast wasn't able to keep the track playing, which the DX port fixes. But maybe when the game's sound director, Jun Sano of Sonic 3 and Knuckles fame, became aware the Dreamcast would do this, he must have came up with the idea that once you end one part of the level and enter a new section, you'll hear a completely new piece of music. It's almost like you've entered the second act of a level. That's genius! Not only do the levels have great themes, each character has a vocal theme song. A lot of them are pretty cheesy, but they're still plentifully nostalgic sounding and fit the characters pretty well, including Big's theme, even though I don't really care that much for him. Not to mention the main theme song for this game, Open Your Heart by Crush 40, and it kicks all sorts of ass. call it butt rock all you want, this song is still fucking great, a-holes. The guitar riff is awesome, and I definitely get pumped up to play the game when you hear this part of the song during the opening of the game. The song even plays during the first part of the Perfect Chaos boss, but I do agree with all the Sonic fans who say that this song should have played during the second part. Even the Game Grumps brought that up. The soundtrack in this game is so fucking great. This isn't just my favorite soundtrack in a Sonic game, it's my all-time favorite soundtrack in any video game. I'm serious. The variety in genres and instruments really makes me love every single track that's in this game. Yes, even Big's fishing music in Emerald Coast. Yes, it sounds trippy and weird, but do you really want to hear Sonic's fast-paced music track while you're fucking fishing? I think not. Alright, back to the levels. Next up is Windy Valley. This level is a bit more straightforward, especially in the third act. The music, on the other hand, may sound very familiar if you played 3D Blast, which I don't blame you if you haven't, that game is kind of shit. But if you don't know what I'm talking about, the music that plays in Windy Valley Act 3 is a remix of Green Grove Act 1 from Sonic 3D Blast. Apparently, Jun Sano reused a few tracks from 3D Blast because, well, he really liked the way they sounded. Yes, that's the actual reason he gave. Which is basically his way of saying, look, 3D Blast was a terrible game, I don't want these music tracks going to waste. Back to Windy Valley, I don't think this level is that bad. It does look nice and the music is very good, but I find it a bit too linear. Apparently, this current version of Windy Hill wasn't even how the level was originally supposed to look or be designed. Earlier footage of Adventure 1 showed a much different looking Windy Valley. This version seemed to be more open-ended and had a lot of blue textures in it. In short, it looks nothing like the final version. Over the years, several photos and still images from both the game and a few Sega employees showed a lot of glimpses of this early designed level. It seemed like we would never be able to play this ancient level. Until a few years ago when a loyal fan used as much of the material released about the level to recreate a playable version of Windy Valley Beta. And holy shit, this level is perfect! I mean, the exploration, the platforming, the speed, all of them are used so greatly in this version of the level. God damn it, why was this version cut out? It's so damn fun! It's probably the best level in the game, but it's not even in the game. God damn it, Sonic Team! Moving on, Casinopolis is okay, but not great. The main goal in Sonic's story is to collect about 300 rings using a pinball machine or the Dilapidated Way, which has a lot of ring boxes to collect. There's a fun Knights Easter egg, and I'm in love with the music that plays during the Dilapidated Way segment of the level. Ice Cap. Good god, Ice Cap looks so fucking pretty on the Dreamcast. In the DX port, the level looks seriously washed out. It looks like a bland snowscape now. The Dreamcast version looks gorgeous in my opinion. The platforming in this level is also really great, and I love the set piece that involves jumping to separate stalactites in order to progress through the level. And the snowboarding section in the third act is also pretty fun.
Oh no! Not an avalanche. You are surfing, baby!
Twinkle Park is pretty spectacular. The first act with the bumper cars is a bit frustrating when other badniks keep bumping into you, causing you to lose rings, but the rest of the level is still really fun. Plus, the music's great and it may sound very familiar. Speed Highway is fast-paced and features that iconic segment of Sonic running down a skyscraper in the second act. I also love how open the third act is, and the music is very relaxing in that part of the level. Red Mountain is a great platforming level. It's about as perfect as Windy Valley Beta, to be honest. The music that plays in the first act is plentifully jazzy and explosive. Then when you enter the volcano section in Act 2, the music gets heavier and much more fast-paced. It's pretty awesome. Sky Deck is a bit more difficult. This is nearing the end of the game, but the first act of this level is surrounded by a huge bottomless pit. The other two acts are a bit better though. As a whole, this level isn't all that bad. Lost World. This place has some pretty nice scenery, but this is also where the camera can be an issue. You can move the camera left or right using the L and R triggers. The Dreamcast controller didn't have a second analog stick, so you can't move the camera up and down, which is kind of annoying. The snake set piece is a bit irritating, and the anti-gravity part is a bit annoying, but the more you replay this game, the better you get at shortcuts. Final Egg. This is the final level for Sonic, but the first level for Gamma. Odd. And since it's Sonic's last level, the difficulty is pretty high with all the badniks and spikes everywhere. I do love the different pathways and hidden ring boxes. There's also...
Hey, that's me.
Yeah, and you function in this game like you did in Sonic R. Non-threatening and completely worthless.
Oh.
While I have gone through all of Sonic's levels, the only one he doesn't go to is the Hot Shelter, which I find a bit disappointing because I think this level is pretty solid. It is Gamma's final level, which expands pretty far into a cool train sequence. It would have been pretty fun to have Sonic play in this level, but Gamma and Amy are still fun to play in this level. Also, there's this Sky Chase minigame that you go through as both Tails and Sonic. There's 2 different Sky Chase levels, so it could be a bit repetitive having to play the same 2 levels for 2 different character stories. But it's a pretty fun minigame. The gameplay style has a pretty similar style to Gamma's, where you could shoot with either X or B, and if you hold down X or B, you could lock onto different enemies, and once you let go, you could shoot a whole bunch of missiles at more than one enemy. You can move the tornado in any direction, and the more enemies you shoot, the more points you'll get. It's a pretty fun minigame. It is a bit repetitive, but I do enjoy the Sky Chase minigame. Also, Bill Aya, the Sega gamer, wanted me to mention that the gameplay style in the Sky Chase minigame is based off the first Panzer the Dragoon game from Sega Saturn. Again, I have not played that game, and it's a pretty interesting trivia. Also, there's that one change in Casinopolis where in the original Japanese version there was this big cowgirl sign, which they decided to remove in the international releases. It's pretty weird, but Bill Aya, the Sega gamer, wanted me to mention that, and hopefully that's the last thing he wants me to mention. For this review, at least. I can't really shoehorn these facts in very well after I've already written the review, so yeah. I've avoided this topic long enough, but each of the levels are connected via 3 different hub areas: Station Square, the Mystic Ruins, and the Egg Carrier. I mentioned when I first played this game back in 2012, I seriously hated the hub worlds. But over the course of playing this game for 4 years, I've come to get used to the hub worlds. They're small, visually nice, and are pretty easy to navigate. So those were the levels in hub worlds, now for the bosses. First up, there's the encounters with Chaos. Throughout the story, the characters end up fighting 5 different forms of Chaos, and each of them isn't really all that difficult. Chaos 0 and Chaos 2 are piss easy. Chaos 4 is alright, but you end up fighting this boss 3 times with Sonic, Tails, and Knuckles. All you have to do is just jump on different lily pads and just jump at the boss when he resurfaces. Actually, one thing I'll say is that while I like the homing attack, I still love the feeling of just jumping onto enemies, and you can do that pretty easily for Chaos 4, and I love how Knuckles' glide can be used to attack enemies as well. Chaos 6 is the only Chaos fight that I'll admit is pretty good, but Eggman keeps throwing down these few badniks that you could pick up and throw at Chaos to freeze him up. Then you could take an easy hit on him. Yes, I said Eggman is the one who tosses down these robots for Sonic to use. Thanks, moron. But one thing people love doing in Sonic games is having Sonic battle Eggman. And you do just that, but Sonic only gets 2 boss battles with Eggman. The Egg Hornet and the Egg Viper. Tails also gets to fight the Egg Hornet, but he also has his own fight with Robotnik called the Egg Walker. The Egg Walker is a pretty decent boss fight. You just avoid the bombs and static shocks, then jump onto Eggman once you get the chance. The Egg Hornet is short as hell as Sonic if you just spam the homing attack, and the Egg Viper is a decent final boss, but Jesus Christ, why do they keep repeating this voice clip from earlier?
Get a load at this! 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 Get a load at this!
The other boss fights are the character battles, and they're pathetic. Knuckles' boss fight is easy as hell, and it's pretty much just the Chaos Zero battle where you can just home in on Knuckles because it takes a bit for him to start attacking you. There's also the issue of voice clips being played during these boss fights, and...
Oh no! Oh no! Give it your... Oh no! Oh no! Oh no! Oh no!
God damn it. Gamma's boss fights are also pretty lame. You can easily beat them by just standing still and mashing the shoot button. It's pretty bad when the music is much better than the actual boss fight. Amy gets a decent boss fight with the badnik that's been chasing her in the levels, and Big... Fishes for Froggy, what the fuck? Then finally, there's the final boss battle with Perfect Chaos. All you really have to do is just pick up enough speed to ram yourself inside of Chaos, then you travel all the way through Chaos's body and hit the very top of his head. Seeing how this is the only part of the game where you're getting to play as Super Sonic, it's a pretty fun boss fight, the music's awesome, and it's a pretty good ending to the game. These boss fights have aged about as well as the cutscenes. A few of the big boss battles are alright, but the character battles are terrible. Okay, what else is there to talk about? Oh yeah, the Chao Garden. What's the Chao Garden? Well, the Chao Garden is basically a virtual pet simulator. Wait, just give me a minute before you click off the video, alright? The Chows are these little creatures that were around during the Echidna tribe and were also associated with Chaos before you went berserk. In specific parts of the hub areas, you'll find a secret passageway that leads to 3 different Chao Gardens, but I always stick with the one that's in Station Square. When you start out, the Chows are inside these eggs that hatch over time, or you can just toss the egg at a wall and they'll pop out. At first, the Chows are gonna start crawling around because, well, they're infants, and you have to help them get the ability to walk. How? Well, in the action stages, you may have noticed that after you kill an enemy, a small animal pops out of it, just like the Genesis games. You can actually pick them up and collect them. Now, before you get 3D Blast flashbacks, no, you don't have to pick them up. After you pick them up, you can collect a whole bunch of them to bring to the Chao Garden. Hand the animal over to the Chao and they'll get some experience points attributed to whatever animal you give them. So if it's a bunny or a small kangaroo, their speed gets increased. Really, all you could do with the Chao is just give them a whole bunch of animals to make their experience points go up so that they can perform better during the Chao races, which is the only mini-game that Adventure 1 has for the Chows to play. On the Dreamcast version, the virtual memory unit could function as a little handheld device. In the game, you can store the Chao in the VMU, which downloads a small game on the unit called Chao Adventure. A fun little game where you can have your Chao go on a few adventures and play some puzzle mini-games in order to earn food to feed the Chao. Chao Adventure can also be used to check on your Chao's stats, since you can't see them in the actual game. Thankfully, the DX port fixes that. One of the main reasons why I and lots of other Sonic fans bothered playing the Chao Garden is because you can earn up to 5 of the 130 emblems you could collect in the game. What are emblems? The emblems are quick medals you earn after you complete a level when you first play the game. Then use either trial mode or go back to the levels in the hub worlds to earn more emblems by doing different tasks and objectives given by the game. Plus there are some emblems that can be found in the hub areas. What happens when you collect all 130 emblems? Well, in the Dreamcast version, you get nothing. Yep, I got every emblem in the game just to make sure, and you get nothing after completing the game. I guess this is apparent since the game's original development was originally rushed, so I guess Sonic Team probably didn't have enough time to put some kind of reward in the game. But in the DX port, you get to unlock Metal Sonic, who's just a Sonic skin that has no special abilities and is just Sonic again. Cool, better than nothing, I guess. Well, seeing how I'm on the topic of the DX port, I should probably briefly talk about it. So yeah, in 2003, Sonic Team released a remastered version of Sonic Adventure called Sonic Adventure DX Director's Cut. This version included new graphics, updated character models, a new mission mode, and unlockable Game Gear games that are only in the GameCube version. The HD version of the DX port got rid of the Game Gear games, which is pretty unfair. I mean, none of them are really that good, but they're still a pretty cool thing to unlock. How else am I gonna play Sonic Drift 1 and 2? Okay, here are things that I like about the DX port. The frame rate is boosted up to a solid 60 frames a second, the loading screens are much shorter, the music that plays in the hub worlds don't restart when you enter a different area, and you could skip the cutscenes. Plus, there's an option to have a free camera, and there's a map feature for the hub worlds. It's not perfect, but both are alright. Now, for the things I don't like. I'm not a fan of the updated graphics. The Dreamcast made these levels look terrific and full of life, but the GameCube made them look very barren and almost out of place. I already mentioned how generic Ice Cap looks, but look at Red Mountain. It's so bland and there's barely any red to the mountain. It's all brown and kind of boring. They should have renamed this level Mountain. Plus, some other levels like Speed Highway or Emerald Cove seem to have lost all its colors, and the hub areas are really boring nowadays. All the passion is lost. Something seriously got lost in translation when this port got made. Then there are the ridiculously shiny new character models. They're so cheap looking, and I don't think they're anywhere near as charming as the blocky Dreamcast models. What happened to the fur details? It used to look so pretty. You know when Mario got put into 3D and you got to see his blocky Nintendo 64 model? It was so precious looking, and I think Dreamcast Sonic had the same appeal. Now they look like plastic figurines modeled after what they looked like in Sonic Adventure 2. Personally, I'm not a big fan of this change. According to some people, this port is also much more buggier. I've never really had an issue playing this game, and if all those complaints are true, then I think Sonic Team should have spent more time ironing out the very few glitches instead of changing the way the characters and levels looked. Now am I saying that Sega should have just kept the game in its original blocky Dreamcast graphics and just fixed the game a bit more? Yes, that's exactly what I'm saying. These upgraded models and textures are seriously out of place, especially since the humans in the hub areas and Dr. Eggman are still in their Dreamcast models. Honestly, I go back to play the Dreamcast version more than I do the DX port. I just love the way the Dreamcast version looks, but I will admit, if I'm going to play the DX port, it's for the mods. In 2004, Sonic Team gave the DX port a PC release, and fans have been modding the game for over 12 years. When the HD port got announced, it was no secret that Sega just used the upscaled PC version to port onto HD consoles. Then that version got ported to Steam. So yes, the current version of Sonic Adventure that's on Steam is a port of a port of a port of a port of a Dreamcast game. Fucking wonderful. Anyways, the Steam version is just about the same game, but fans haven't really been modding that version since they're more familiar with the original 2004 PC release. However, a very kind group of fans decided to make a quick mod for the Steam version that makes it compatible with older mods. This installation is called BetterSADX, which really is a much better Sonic Adventure DX. Now the Steam version is completely moddable, it can run in full widescreen, and you can play as Super Sonic in regular levels, which is pretty fun. So yeah, I'd recommend the Steam version and using the BetterSADX mod to make your experience more fun. But as of right now in 2016, there isn't a mod that replaces all the DX textures and character models with the Dreamcast originals. Thankfully, a fan that goes by the name D. Shaney is finally working to make that mod a possibility. It's still in early progress, but I can't wait for that mod to be finished. I look forward to seeing Dreamcast Sonic run around in Windy Valley Beta. Also, it's so great to see the original ice cap in high definition. Thank you, D. Shaney. But until that mod is complete, I don't mind loading the original version on Dreamcast. I would recommend getting a Dreamcast and the original Sonic Adventure, but I wish you the best of luck if you want to go through with that. It was quite a hassle to get this Dreamcast and a copy of Sonic Adventure for this review. I ended up going through 2 Dreamcasts before I got one that worked longer than 2 weeks, and I had to get 4 different copies of Sonic Adventure before I got the perfect copy. The first Dreamcast had a broken controller port that I tried to fix 3 times. The second one's disc reader got ruptured, and I tried fixing it, but now there's no way I'm gonna be able to seal this thing shut. The third one is thankfully refurbished and had a new battery installed with it, so thank you eBay users PurryE.Spanic for selling me this Dreamcast that actually fucking works. Now the copy of SA1 that I currently have. The first copy was sold to be in its original case but had the Sega All-Stars logo on it, and the seller said he had the disc professionally buffed, which made the scratches look non-existent, but this ended up messing up with the disc's data and it wouldn't load Emerald Coast. I got another copy for $14 and it ran pretty well despite being damaged a bit. I played through the whole game and it didn't have any glaring problems, but it did have a difficult time playing the track used for E102 Gamma's theme song. Here's a recreation of what would happen when I tried to play that song. Yeah, it was pretty weird. Aside from that track, the game played just fine, but I still wanted to get a better copy of Sonic Adventure. So I kept browsing eBay and saw a brand new copy of Sonic Adventure that went for just $42. This freaked me out because new copies of Sonic Adventure would go for about $75. So I bought this copy, opened it on camera, and it didn't work. It didn't fucking work. I did scrub it a little, but the Dreamcast still wouldn't read the damn disc. I even put a few light scratches on the disc to see if it would trigger the disc reader, but the system still wouldn't read the damn disc. I went online to see if this was a serious problem, and I found out something really stupid and weird. Apparently, the Dreamcast has a difficult time reading discs that have been sealed for a long time, and several people have reported that new copies of some Dreamcast game wouldn't load for them. Ugh! I ended up rage quitting and kept browsing eBay. I eventually came across a like-new copy of Sonic Adventure listed by eBay users Son and Mama. It was just a disc, but I already had the case, so I bought it, and finally I was able to play Sonic Adventure on Sega Dreamcast without any issues. So again, thank you Purry.smec for the Dreamcast and Sun and Mama for the working copy of Sonic Adventure. I do recommend playing Sonic Adventure with the original Dreamcast graphics and textures to get the original feel, so I'd say wait until D Shady is done working on his Dreamcast mod, but if you really want to take the risk and get a Dreamcast and a copy of Sonic Adventure online, be my guest. But be careful. Avoid brand new and professionally buffed discs. But if you don't mind the DX port's graphical differences, then you know what, go ahead and play the version that's on Steam. It's pretty much the same game, just with different graphics that I'm a bit anal towards. The current version is still the same fun, easy to control, thrilling adventure game starring Sonic the Hedgehog. This review has gone on for long enough, so despite its few flaws and distracting extras thrown into the game, I think Sonic Adventure is still a really good game. A lot of people complain about how this game has no idea what it wants to be. I am with the crowd of people who wish this game could have stuck more to Sonic's gameplay style and that each character should have been able to play in the levels just fine. But despite the differing gameplay styles, the endless mini-games, and the fact that this is more of a Dreamcast demonstration than it is a Sonic game, when you're playing as Sonic, it feels just right. The main point of the game, and the part that people want to play as, somehow Sonic Team didn't fuck it up. When you're playing as Sonic, it plays just how you think it'll play. It's not as perfect as the Genesis games, but it comes pretty damn close. Like some Kami Johnny said, and pretty much anyone who's played this in Adventure 2 will say, the way the characters, especially Sonic, controls are perfect. They feel great to control and it really feels like you're these characters. The controls in this game are so good that I seriously think, to this day, that Sonic Adventure is still the best 3D Sonic game we ever got. Yup, I'm putting this one slightly above Sonic Generations because that's how I roll. As a whole, the graphics have aged badly, but I still love the way the game looks on the Dreamcast, the soundtrack is awesome, and most importantly, when you're playing as Sonic, it's a blast. And to be honest, that's all I'm looking for in a Sonic game. It's not perfect, but it's definitely not terrible. It's one of my most favorite video games to go back and play, and I'm giving it a 7.5 out of 10. It's great. Next time on Cooper's Perspective, we're going to look at the sequel to Sonic Adventure 1, which is Sonic Adventure 2 Battle on Nintendo GameCube, because this is apparently the best version of the game to get. And sorry for the lengthy video, I had an awful lot to say about Adventure 1, but I'll see you guys next time for Adventure 2. Thanks for watching.
Despite his